Good morning, everyone. It is 10:15. Let the record show that we have a quorum present. In fact, we have a full house, so I call the meeting to order. And today we're continuing our public hearings on the reports from the Pension Board reports that were made public through an order by the Ombudsman on the website of the Department of Pensions and Labour. And this morning we will be dealing with Fidelity Pension Services Limited, followed by Island Heritage Retirement Pension Plan, and this afternoon after lunch with Silver Tat Pension Plan. So I'll invite the Sarge to bring the witness for Fidelity Pension Services Limited into the chambers.
Can't see with my dark glasses. I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honourable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Sir? Good morning, Mr. Hill, and thank you for taking the time to come and appear before the Public Accounts Committee. As you will have been informed, we're dealing with the multi-year pension office reports that were published on their website a couple of weeks ago. And you're here this morning to represent Fidelity Pension Services Limited. We have a couple of questions, but we understand confidentiality and proprietary information, so we will make all attempts to steer clear of that. And it's not intended to be an adversarial meeting. We're not out to get you, right? But we would encourage you to give us forthright and straight answers. If you don't have a particular piece of information, you can provide it later on in writing. So the rule is that the first question you answer, you give your full name and the company that and your title and the company you represent, so it will appear properly in the Hansard records. So without further ado, I invite Mr. Chris Saunders to start off the questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Hill. Thanks very much for attending this morning. Just to slightly expand on what the chairman said in his opening remarks, is that this session is more from an information gathering standpoint. It's been well over 10 years since these reports were actually in the public domain. And one of the things that we wanted to focus, especially now in the interest of the public, where the pension has become on the forefront due to the government recent changes to allow people to withdraw from their pensions early, is that we're open that this session or these sessions be seen as more educational and informative. One of the things that we have realized, based on even questions we get from our own constituents, is that there's still a lot of misinformation about there with pension, so we think it is important for us to have this and also give your organization an opportunity to better educate your members and the wider public in terms of how it is that Fidelity operates. So it is not meant to be adversarial, but more informative than anything else. And again, if there are any answers you don't have, you feel free to submit it at a later date. So that is really the approach in which that we're trying to take, just to kind of understand it and then the philosophy of the company. So with that said, my first question to you, Mr. Hill, through the chairman, is what would you say is pretty much like the core values, the what do you call it, the vision, or what it is that Fidelity Pension was actually looking to achieve, or where it is that they were getting to? And also, can you, I know that I understand there may have been some recent changes in terms of ownership, and just also give us an update in terms of where we are in the process with regards to the new owners of the Fidelity Pension Plan. Thank you.
My name is Roger Brett Hill, and I'm the President and CEO of the Fidelity Pension Services Cayman Limited. I do apologise in advance. I have a slight speech impediment. It's not because I'm nervous. I'm simply not. The values, the way we set our pension plan up, it was to be a best of breed. So in other words, we chose what we felt were the best investment managers for Asia, Europe, the US, and bonds. Our pension plan was established in 2004, which was some six years after the National Pensions Law came into effect. So, you know, we had the benefit of hindsight when we did that. That seems to work quite well. The intention has always been to stock pick and run our plan on a highly conservative basis to achieve long-term yields, which would beat the other plans, but on a less risk-based basis. And I'm sorry, Mr. Saunders, there was a second question which you asked me.
Concerning the sale, in terms of the update on the sale.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, as many of you are aware, our chairman is very ill. He's chairman of the Fidelity Group. And one of our means of getting an exit strategy for him has been for us to sell the insurance brokerage business and the pension services business. I happen to be a shareholder of both, so I wear both my banking hat and my pension hat. The pension service, so the insurance companies were purchased by the carriers, the main insurance carriers that they write for, and the pension services company was purchased as part of an arrangement when we bought out the Royal Fidelity Group, which was a joint venture between ourselves, Fidelity, and Royal Bank of Canada. So we bought out Royal Bank of Canada, and we bought out the Fidelity Group, and we're in the process now of bringing the same products and services into Cayman as we offer in Bahamas, where we have some 60-something staff, and Barbados, where we have about 10 staff. We are hoping to, once we get the licenses, which we've applied for, a restricted banking license, and we've applied for a CIBIL license, we would hope to expand our staff count here to about 18 people, and we have recently rented space to start doing that with effect from the 1st of next month.
So, thank you very much. Are you saying the pension, is it the pension group that's going to go up to 18 staff?
At the moment, I've got 3 full-time staff, but I've had to expand that to 3 additional staff here. And I've had to bring on an additional 6 people in Nassau to deal with the current payouts. But We will look to expand our Cayman team from 3 people to 18 people once we start to offer our fund services and banking services. So we plan to introduce the same suite of funds that the group currently offers in other countries.
Earlier you said in terms of the additional staff to deal with the applications that came in. How many of your members, or what was the total in terms of number of your members that actually applied for the early withdrawal of pension, and roughly like ballparkish, what was the
Okay,
amount?
so we have 11,000 members. We would expect most of them to apply because there's no maximum. There doesn't seem to be too many rules around this law. So, frankly, people do not who view pensions as a tax at the best of times will likely draw their pensions out. There seems to be a slowing down, but we're up to about 3,000 odd people who have applied, which you will appreciate is a very large volume, and we're also dealing with a very high volume of phone calls, a lot of negative PR on the, I don't want to say Mile Road because it might infer Cayman Mile Road, but I mean the Mile Road in a broader sense. I therefore had to hire to retain a PR company to deal with that aspect of it. I've had to double the size of my staff. The other difficulty which we are dealing with, which if I now take my pensions hat off and put my banking hat on, now that we're paying out monies to members, there's a limit to how much the electronic funds transfer system can handle. So we're dealing with this on multiple fronts. And we are also dealing with some fairly serious threats from the public. So I won't go into the details because some of the threats that have been made have not been terribly pleasant.
Well, one of the things, just looking at, you said earlier in terms of putting on your banking ad, I put mine back on too. One of the things I was curious, you said you had 11,000 members. And you have 3 staff. Now, from a ratio in terms of relationship managers, I know roughly how many companies is that roughly?
1,000.
1,000.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, from a relationship manager standpoint, I mean, 3 staff to manage, 1,000 employees and 11,000 members. I mean, I think to some extent that'd be a little bit of a stretch.
No, I don't think so. We would have staffed up if we'd required more. Also, understand that we're part of a larger group too. So in fact, it's 3 full-time people here, but the accounts and an awful lot of the NAV type work gets done in Nassau. So no, until this law was passed, we did not have any PR issues.
Okay, well, the thing about it is, because I also read the social media comments also, and I'll be the first to tell anyone that to differentiate between dealing with 1,000 employers paying in each month, that is one thing, because for each employee would probably be one lump sum check or something that would cover many. Then you have the individuals underneath, so that will naturally change the volume of any organization.
Absolutely.
So I can definitely be sympathetic to that, because your business would have been geared to deal with 1,000 employers, yes, and the few retirees that you would have had.
Yes.
And then for this to come through. So I think there's some level of patience that would have been or should have been expected from the public. And then equally so, in terms of the even the 45-day limit, people also need to understand that when you do buy certain or you make certain investments, even you have now taken a liquid asset, money, and turned it into something illiquid. To convert that back into something liquid also sometimes takes time.
Correct.
And if you do it too quickly, it will also cause people to lose money. So we get that to some extent. And thus, I think even the 45 days it may seem like plenty, but if you buy something for 3-5 years and you're breaking it, or you could have just renewed it the other day, to breaking it, there'll be significant penalties. Depends on the risk profile that you have within the organization. So we do understand that. But I think what this has also brought out in terms of some organizations is even the systems. Because like one pension provider, I believe by the end of this month, would have, according to them, I understand, paid out well over 90% in terms of the applications that they would have processed. And that's one of the larger ones on island versus, so we do understand that to some extent. But one of the things I think that is important, and this is where the question comes in, is in that, do you believe in terms of now that you have seen the volume of what it can become in terms of not something that no one would have planned for, but in terms of your systems, have you guys looked at your system and look at any processes that you could have changed or make any investment in additional IT? Because at the end of the day, most stuff needs to be automated now as opposed to.
Yes, sir. What we did was we engaged NetClues to write a system for us to automate the downloading of the application forms. But we're still having problems with the IDs not being cleared, people sending in photos of forms, people having handwriting that you simply cannot read. So it's not as simple as that. So we've got optical character recognition software in place now, which we purchased especially to deal with this. Personally, I'm not anxious to be fined $10,000 for every transgression or spend a year in Northwood. Frankly, we're likely to transgress this law at least 1,000 times, and 1,000 years in Northwood seems like a long time to me. So, no, I'm being facetious, but you have to understand, and you understand the funds industry as well as I do. If you make an application during May to have your pension paid back to you, I can only legally pay you based on the May NAV. And all of the pension plans are funds of funds. So we're reliant on the funds providing us with their NAVs, which normally takes 12 to 14 days, which leaves me with 1 day to turn that around and pay people. It's simply not possible. So I have made my views known on this, but no one's actually come back to me on it. But it's simply not a law that we can possibly follow. But we're doing our best. I'm very, very sure that all of the people that applied for their pension refunds in May will be paid out before the end of June based on the May NAVs, because we've got the systems now in place, which we've had to engage consultants to write for us. And we've got the people in place. It's not quick to hire people. I have only hired Caymanians, but even that takes up the process. So I think I'm fully staffed. We think we've got systems in place to deal with it, and we believe that we will have paid all the people, and we're paying people now. Even as I sit here, the next upload file is being sent over to the bank. So we think we've got it in our hand, but we had some initial issues with the upload form. But I'm merely explaining to this Honourable House the process by which you get your NAVs. You cannot apply for your pension in May and be paid out based on an April NAV, because you'd be paying out with the benefit of hindsight. What if the markets had tanked in the first week of May, and then we start paying out based on the April NAVs, which would be to the disadvantage of the members that stay in. I have an issue with this personally. I am quite happy to disclose that I'm the second largest pension holder in our pension plan. The value of my pension is $550,000. I can withdraw $141,000. I don't plan to, because the optics of it would be too ghastly. If I did, I'd go and invest it elsewhere. I wouldn't spend it at Foster's. I do predict the sale of 70-inch TVs from cost UMS, the jewellery stores and the auto dealers is going to be quite high over the next several months. And given the addiction that people who live in Cayman And by this, I want to make it very clear, I'm not talking about Caymanians. I'm talking about people that live and work in Cayman, are addicted to online shopping. This is in no way going to benefit the economy. Our pension plan, if people draw out their maximum, is going to drop from $150 million down to $72 million. So we seem to be kicking a very large can down a very short road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, good morning to the witness.
Morning,
I'm just trying to get an understanding of the total number of clients for Fidelity. On your website, fidelitygroup.com, right at the front page, it states, due to its superior performance over the years, the plan now has over 3,000 members.
Yes, that's the old website.
But then we look at the article that appeared in the media that followed the social media allegations, and it stated that you have 11,000 members.
We do.
It's 11,000 members.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. You also mentioned earlier in the question posed by the member that you have about 3,000 of those clients have requested withdrawals as part of the...
So far, yes.
So far, yes. Are you able to tell this committee whether of those 3,000 withdrawal requests, whether they have requested the minimum, which is $10,000,
Or the amount
or
in
the
account.
or the other option, 10,000 plus 25%?
Virtually all of them have requested the maximum amount.
All of them have requested the maximum amount.
The average pension plan member views the pension as a tax. So they do not want their money locked away until 65 years old. They somehow believe the government will take care of them if they cannot afford to live. It's my grave concern.
Another concern, and I'm wondering whether you share it, given the fact that, and we've spent 2 days in hearings and we've talked to other pension providers, and the average numbers of persons making withdrawals about 50%, 20%. Does 3,000 withdrawals, all requesting to withdraw the maximum allowable pension withdrawal, give you concerns in terms of the confidence that your clients continue to maintain in your pension program?
I'm not sure that the withdrawals have anything to do with confidence in our plan. Our plan has always made positive returns. When the markets tanked in March, our plan only went down by about 6%, and it's now coming back up. But then we were a highly liquid plan. Now, we didn't predict COVID-19, but we did feel that the US market was overvalued. So it isn't a confidence thing. People are taking their money out because they don't want it locked in. There's also a fear that the private pension plans will be done away with, and the monies will be managed by the government pension plan. I appreciate that's not going to sit well with everybody, but that's the fact.
Would you agree that part of the culture of people feeling that way about their pension money is the way the industry has marketed the selfishness around the defined contribution plan? It is your money and you will have access to it. Nobody else can handle your money but you, right? As opposed to a effort to educate the public more of the social conscience of a pension plan, and that you may, that you're going to need it down the road, not now.
Yes, we've tried that. I'm in an awkward position now because we do have a suite of funds, but I'm not licensed to sell them. So whilst I might encourage people to invest their money elsewhere, I'm not licensed to actually give that advice. So frankly, until I get granted that license, I can't do it. I mean, my sense is, I get why people will take their money out because they simply don't want it locked in at 65 years old. But I think we've done quite a good job. I mean, I can't speak for all of the other pension plans, but we've certainly exceeded the yields of putting the money in the bank, even though we've chosen to run our pension plan on a relatively low risk basis, which means that we possibly did not take advantage of the rise in the markets. But it was an issue that we simply didn't trust. But the long-term yields of our plan are about 4% per year. And we're talking about, we've had 2 market crashes. You know, there was a massive market crash in 2008 and 2009, and there was a massive market crash in March. So I don't believe it's a yield issue. I mean, I don't think, you know, based on the information which I'm getting, nobody checks their pension statements. Now, our pension statements get sent out every 6 months. They get delivered to every employer. And I still get people on a daily basis, a number of calls, saying they've never had a statement. Well, if that's true,
Yeah.
that means the employer hasn't given them a statement, which I would hate to think that that's the case.
But obviously that is the case. But so you don't send your pension information to individual members. You send it to the employment to which they are employed, and the reason they're a member of your plan is because they're in that company.
Yes, well, because people's postal addresses are normally their company, right? So, you know, now we have part of our job, and something which we spend an awful lot of time doing, is dealing with delinquent employers who either pay late or don't pay at all. In other words, steal money from their employers. And I do find it ironic that the penalties that someone who steals from their employers face are somewhat lower than the penalties which I face under this law. But probably a separate discussion for a different day. But I do feel quite strongly about it.
We went through, you say your pension plan started in 2004,
Yeah.
right? We went through a huge exercise in 2016 where the government brought massive amendments. If I recall, there was some amendments to some 40 clauses in a 45 clause law. Was representation made, because the government promoted those changes as largely industry requested and certainly industry accepted after consultation. Were these kind of representations that you're making now made during that public consultation process? And
Well, my recollection of the events at the time, and I recall them fairly clearly, is that we were called to a meeting at the Government House, which we attended, and I believe the actuarial company from Canada said they had consulted the industry widely, and we all looked at each other and asked if we had actually met with these people, and the answer was no, we had not met with these people.
yes, okay. And I suspect that because when I talked to people in the industry about how they had been consulted, I got that kind of response. But the industry kept silent with the government making changes to a law that was going to, that it directly affected them, and made no public representation to say, well, we were not consulted and we don't support this clause in the bill, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you have to appreciate that we're regulated entities, so...
But I would argue that part of your responsibility, even though you're regulated, is to make sure that you're getting the best legislation to provide the best pension.
Yes, sir. What we were told was that these changes would be made. There was a meeting which was held by Minister Anglin shortly thereafter, and we were told the changes that were coming through, and certain changes did come through. Some of the changes which were put forward by Mr. Kenny Bryan to do with the for instance, the withdrawal for housing.
But I don't think Mr. Anglin's bill actually came to Parliament. I think it was Minister Rivers that brought the bill in 2016. Mr. Anglin was was not in the assembly in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well, what I'm saying is that the meeting was chaired by Mr. Anglin, and the Department of what is now the Department of Labour and Pensions did give a presentation as to how these changes would be made. But one of the bigger issues at the time was the investment regs that have been put through as far back as 2008 hadn't been changed. And one of the things which the pension plans wanted was to have a prudent man approach. I'm sure you've heard of that. There was very strong opposition to it by certain activists at the time who were involved in the National Pensions Board. So we still sit at the point where the investment regulations for the government pension plan are some 3 lines long. We've got 35 or 36 pages of regulations that have not been changed since 2008. And I'm sure we can all agree that the world is a very different place, and those investment regulations do need to be changed. They simply weren't.
But we were told in evidence on Wednesday that unfortunately there are sections of the 2016 law that have not yet commenced, and that the investment regulations are not yet completed or put in place for the 2016 law. Has the absence of those sections of the law that have not been commenced, therefore not implemented, and the investment regulations hampered Fidelity's ability to offer the best possible service to its pensioners?
Yes.
Okay, great. What representation, normally, in the process of legislation, it is the industry and the people who want to see changes to legislation who advocate the government, therefore, and pressure government to doing it. One of the things that I find shocking is that there does not seem to be any collective ability by the private pension schemes or even individual ability or commitment by the private pension schemes to pressure the government, or at least to expose it publicly that these changes are to be made. And your suggestion is that that might be because you're fear that you're a regulated industry.
It's not a fear. I don't fear anything to do with regulation or anything else. We simply follow the law as best we can. We've been told that it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It just hasn't come yet.
Yeah, oh, I get told the same thing.
Yeah, so if you get told the same thing, then who am I to, you know, I'm just a voter, so, you know, I have made representations over the last few months. I've been highly vocal about this new law and the structure of it, and nobody's written back yet, so hey ho.
Well, you're preaching to the choir when you talk about the absolute lack of public consultation as an active proponent of participatory democracy. Well, my disappointment is that there's not enough public consultation, but I also must register the disappointment that I believe that the industry has an obligation to initiate and to insist that that participation take place. And one of the things that we find in our local community here that people seem to be reluctant to get involved in the political process to make change for good unless it is change directly as opposed to the wider community.
Well, I don't consider myself from Cayman, but I definitely consider myself for Cayman, which is an expression which we've heard. This is my home. I've been here for 30 years. I intend to stay here for a long time. But I don't really want to be funding the future shortfalls in pension benefits that exist both within the government plans and what will likely now exist in the private plans. But I've never been really reluctant to say my piece, and over the years it might have cost me. But if anyone wants my opinion, you're definitely going to get it. So whether you like what I have to say or not, I have a great many things I'd like to say about this pensions law, but this isn't the forum for it. So I think that the
Yeah, well, sorry, I would suggest that if, because we're dealing, you see, one of the problems we have is that these reports have not been published,
Yes.
and this is our first opportunity for this kind of forum, because we should have had a forum like this every year, basically, which would allow people like you to come before us and therefore before the public and offer evidence like this, which is very important to that culture and public education. So what we're trying to establish here, dealing with the multiple year reports that have come out now,
Yeah.
in a broad spectrum, to try to set a kind of a foundation and a framework going forward, with the hope that we have extracted from the government regulatory authorities a commitment to complete 18 and 19 in this calendar year, so that we'll be up to date. Because we believe that this forum before the public is a great opportunity for industry members like yourself to offer evidence in a protected environment, if there's such a thing in Cayman.
Yeah.
But at least we're the pensioners, the people that really need to know, because we are certainly, speaking for myself, I believe that individual pension plans, right, get the kind of information and interaction with the government that they do. What I don't see any evidence of is that the members for who the plan is set up get a similar opportunity.
Well, I think, Honourable Mr. Miller, that you have to appreciate. So I've been around the block here for 30 years. Okay, so I consider myself very much the same as you, and I admire the fact that you're outspoken on issues. I might not always agree with you. I have to tell you that. But anyway,
We've had our differences, but it's always been fact and thing.
You say those things now. The problem is, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I've been a member of the Bankers Association for the longest time. Now, I can tell you the banks compete, okay? But if we band together and lobby for something, we're accused of being a cartel.
But that's just a diversion.
A perception that exists in the market to this date. And the pension administrators have only recently, it's this crisis has sort of brought us back together. But I will agree with your comments that we've not really, we've had a loose grouping, but we don't really speak with each other. So it's only now that we've been speaking with each other that we're trying to deal with this crisis. So yeah, I think you are absolutely right. We've probably not done enough to actually lobby government. But to be fair, we are being told that it's coming. But it's hardly a level playing field. I mean, I don't take kindly to the criticism of the private pension plans when we get compared with the government pension plans. I really don't. Like a government pension plan is administered by an independent office, which I suspect is largely quite bloated. They certainly don't run it with three people. They deal with two pension plans. Their employers are never past due. A lot of my employers are, and I'm required to police it. Now, I don't consider it my job to actually police people who are stealing people's money. I don't like it. I don't like thieves. But you cannot compare the two, because we have to administer our plan, and there's a cost to it, and the plan has to pay for it. And we do it, as Mr. Saunders rightly points out, we're able to do it with three people, which I think is pretty good, given the fact that we're not just taking pension contributions. So I think we run a fairly tight ship, and we've got very good systems, and we're upgrading those systems now to the most recent versions. So the government pension plan is not accountable for anything. If it's underfunded, the taxpayer simply has to pay for it. So we all know that the defined benefit plan is way underfunded by a number of hundreds of millions of dollars. We also know that the the defined contribution plan is probably underfunded as well, but because it is my understanding that even the people in the defined contribution plan, re-entire, it's done at a guaranteed annual rate, which the private sector cannot offer.
Well,
So again, the taxpayer is going to have to plug that hole. And with all these payouts going now, if my experience is the same as Silver Thatch, so let's deal with Silver Thatch. So we've got 11,000 members, Silver Thatch probably 22,000 members. Brit-K, I don't know too much about their plan, but it's probably 16,000 members.
the total number is 73,000.
Right, and the number that has come out of the amount of money that will probably be withdrawn, the Premier is probably right, it'll be in the region of $500 million. It's not a bad guess, but it's not going to be spent for Foster's. Okay? I mean, let's get
Well,
it
yeah,
straight. So,
you're preaching to the converted, so you notice I voted,
yeah,
I voted against the
I
bill.
don't mean to single out Foster's. I could have said Kirk and I could have said anything else, but the fact of the matter is that money is going to largely leave these shores, okay? If I took my money out, it would not be invested in Cayman, it would be invested elsewhere. I have a view that pension money should be invested in the local economy. And the way to do that is to allow us to create vehicles to invest that. But there are barriers to it.
I agree with you entirely. But I must tell you, as the person who fought the Chamber of Commerce and the financial industry in the Cayman Islands in the 90s about introducing social network pension type thing, social security type security for people. That's why we limited to $60,000, right? It is the private sector who created the nightmare that they have. The reason you have 15 to 30 pages of regulations and investment is because the private sector convinced the public that that was necessary, and the government didn't know what they were doing because they didn't have enough regulations around the money, they didn't have enough protections to the regulation. So that is all self-inflicted.
Well, it's self-inflicted, but not by the pension service providers. It might have been inflicted by the Chamber of Commerce, but it wasn't inflicted by the...
There is no evidence, evidence in the public that the current pension providers has made any public effort, right, to change those things positively for the pensions. I agree that there's probably some...
Do you believe, honestly, that we've got the power to say, hold on, the advice that the government got in 2008 was that people would need to contribute 16% of their salaries for 40 years of their working lives in order to be able to afford to retire. And the government put together something that said we're only going to pay in 10%, and what's more, we'll cap there's a salary cap, right? That wasn't us. That definitely wasn't pension service providers. Heck, it's in my interest to get as many contributions as I possibly can. It's a matter of scale. The bigger my scale, frankly, the better it is for me.
Oh, I agree with you entirely.
I can guarantee you, I've never lobbied against pensions. What I can tell you is that our company has had a pension plan in place since 1965. It was changed in 1988. The worst thing that happened to me during my career was the National Pensions Law coming in, because I then moved from a defined benefits plan, which I would have been living off very nicely, thank you. Could have been doing it. I'm 58 years old now. I could have done it since I was 55. Been living off 60% of my previous salary, which is fairly healthy. I accept that. So you don't need to criticize me on that.
No, I'm not criticizing you individually. This is not individual.
I know, but I'm just saying to you, the worst thing that happened to me personally was that the law changed, because the pensions law was written for a defined contribution plan.
Well, and I didn't make the switch, trust me.
And I don't blame you. I think you're going to be living very, very happily. I might have to come to you for a loan, which is kind of ironic for our bank here. But
one of the shortcomings, I believe, of the totality of the private sector pension plans is that they are not, even as a defined contributions, they are not structured to deliver a specific pension at the end of the day that people can live off of. Because what the current legislation says now, that if I am currently making $5,000, $6,000 a month and I retire tomorrow, I can somehow magically live off $1,000 a month. because that's the maximum that the law allows the defined contribution to pay me.
Yeah, I think it's $1,040.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, but you know, the 47 cents can't buy a gallon of milk per week for the year at Foster's.
The problem is the law was set to fail at the outset because the government of the day didn't do what they were advised to do.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, so.
But
firstly,
then, I can tell you, sir, that having...
There's a very, very simple solution to this madness that is going on. If you want people to have enough money to retire on, stop giving them their money back.
Yeah, sir?
I mean, it's just, it's illogical. I mean, you've got this this law that's come out that I'm paying all of my staff, every single one, even those people who are working from home. I mean, it's news to me that I've got 76 staff and I seem to be managing quite well at 50, but it would be a bit unconscionable to start trimming fat now. But the mere fact that I've been paying my staff and every single one of my members of staff is going to draw their pension out, and I'd probably accuse them of being idiots, not to, you know, because they can. But I also know my staff very, very well. They're not going to reinvest the money in the economy, okay? They're not.
No,
None of them. They already live from paycheck to paycheck, and we consider ourselves very, very good payers. So, you know, there's this argument that the system is broken somehow. Well, it's broken because the government keeps giving people their money back. Stop doing that, and there'll be enough money in the pot. It's not a complicated issue. Now, however, I do accept the fact that people need money. I've got people calling me who are in genuine need, and I sympathize with those people. I truly, truly do. They need the money, and I get the fact that the government doesn't have a social security net and a pot of gold coins, okay? I get that. But I'm getting calls from attorneys from large law firms demanding their cash and behaving extremely badly, and I have no compunction in talking to those people and telling them exactly what I think of them. They're still getting paid.
Yeah. Well,
So it's an outrageous state of affairs. They should have capped it. They should have said, okay, we're going to cap it at $5,000, and we're going to revisit this thing in three months' time. There should have been a means test. I can take $141,000 out of my pension plan, and I don't need the money. And if I do that, I probably won't invest it in the local economy. I'll go and invest it in our funds that are based in Nassau and invest in the US.
well, that's one of the other things I have about the pension money is that it's
no means
directed
test.
overseas. We have to be the only country in the world that force our people to save money through a pension plan that is invested in required to be shipped overseas to be invested.
I agree with you, but we've created an environment where it's impossible for you to invest locally. Let me give you an example. Many, many years ago, we tried to form what we called a property fund. It was never going to work. Why wasn't it going to work? Well, because the property fund would have to pay 7.5 to 9% stamp duty
On every transaction.
on every time we bought a property. No issue with that. But every time someone buys and sells shares, we've got to pay that duty again. I approached government, I lobbied government, it was never passed. A number of people have tried. The late Mr. Ugland tried it. Kim Lund tried it. Still hasn't worked. So create an environment whereby we can create these vehicles locally. Now, even when the government issues bonds, 40% of our plan is in bonds. How much is invested in government bonds? $500,000 in the National Development Housing Trust. Why is that? Because every time the government issues bonds, they get subscribed by large funds from overseas. So you cannot blame the pension plans for not investing locally. There's nothing for us to invest in. Oh, no, we have got some CEC stocks.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I agree with the sentiments that were raised by Mr. Saunders in the House. I do watch the proceedings in the House, as I've mentioned, and I do listen to all the talk shows. I try not to read the blogs because they just make me angry. But the system is broken, but not because we broke it. It was never fixed to start with.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
The implementation of it was never
in
implemented
debating,
the way
in
it
debating the
should be in the
changes
first place.
to the pension law, I think I started off by saying
Yeah.
it is not possible to amend bad law into good law.
And I would agree with that.
But
But the problem is, in times of crisis, governments gain power. And I'm not criticizing this government. I'm really not. I think this government has done an amazing job at containing the virus. I'm not a big fan of this pensions amendment bill, as you'll probably gather. But I think the government has done an amazing job at containing this virus. But in a time of crisis, it's an excuse for the government to take on a lot of power. And during those times, history has shown us that terrible laws are passed. This is
Oh,
one
yeah.
of those occasions. So, so it's a slip up. I'm sure the Premier will be having a word with me about it, but I know where he drinks, and I already owe him a couple of McCallum. So.
Oh, there you go. Be careful. But we seem to be
nothing
we seem
personal.
to be divergent. But it's good to hear that there are some concerns such as yours out there in the private sector. But to get us a little bit back on track, what would you be willing to offer to this committee some recommendations, and we'd be quite happy to give you time to consider them,
Yes.
that could be done to improve the pension environment in the Cayman Islands? And we would invite you to make that submission to
I
the
would
committee, through the clerk, on the same email, manessaweb@gov.ky. Because one of the things that we will be doing is we'll be making recommendations to the Legislative Assembly
Yes.
through a report, which the
Yes.
government is statutorily
I would
obligated
be delighted, and I
to
would,
respond. Not that they always do, but they're supposed to respond within 90 days, and we do our best to try to hold them to that 90 days, that there's some response. And one of those recommendations is likely to be that the investment regulations be brought in ASAP. And if that and that there should be.
I haven't seen what the new investment regulations look like. I know.
Well, that's what I was
scaled
adding.
back a lot. I know
We're also likely to recommend that they need to be able to demonstrate to the Public Accounts Committee that there has been active consultation with industry.
I will take it upon myself to actively consult with other members of the industry. I know them. I'm probably more outspoken than all of them. And any time I'm given a podium to air my views, I'm happy to do so. If any of you on an individual basis would care to meet over a beer, I can wax lyrical for a great long deal of time on what my views are on the pensions law and a great many other matters.
Yes. Any other questions?
Actually, just a little bit I was keeping, just in terms of the actual people who made the application. I know the law had required, I think, for them to get a response within a certain particular time period, and then 45 days since that
Yes.
time period. Is it fair to say that, I mean, I know you say they've been tight in terms of the timelines, but will Fidelity Bank be complying with those provisions, or you guys may slide on that a little bit?
I didn't say it would be tight. I said it would be impossible.
Okay.
So what we requested was 60 days. If I have to make 3,000 payouts when I can only get my NAVs done one day before the end of the 45-day period, I'm in a world of hurt. I asked for 60 days. We didn't get it. And the Premier announced at his press briefing that he would be enforcing this law. So actually, maybe I'm going to be in Northwood for 3,000 days, if you can tell. I will also say that be somewhat cautious about what you read on the blogs. I mean, I think there's a relationship between a certain control of the Silver Thatch plan and the right of Cayman Mile Road. So I take a lot of that with a pinch of salt. But what we tend to do is go and do a search on everybody that I've actually hired a company to do it, on anybody that posts on these blogs. And we've worked out that about 95% of people posting on those blogs, including one person who sought to incite a run on the bank, which I did take a little personally, to be honest with you. And that person lives in London and is neither a client of our bank nor is she a member of our pension plan. And the same can be said for about 95% of the bloggers on that site. So I don't know if people are being paid to blog. I mean, all's fair in competition, I guess, but I'm not sure I'd stoop quite that low.
I think here's an opportunity for you to give the necessary assurances that other than the time frame,
Yes.
that the pension plan is capable financially
Yes.
of paying the money that's been requested,
Yes.
and that it is being processed as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Yes.
And I think that
we're working till midnight to actually deal with
Yes.
this stuff.
Okay.
And
That's important to the
we are
committee.
currently paying people.
Good.
It's not without its challenges. We're having problems with some of the upload files, which has been dealt with now, and which I'll go and see to you when I get back to the office and dress down for casual Friday so that the charity can take $5 from my pay. But
It helps.
yeah, so we are making payments now. We've done the very best that we can, but we were set an impossible task. I do believe there's one specific plan that has been able to pay out quite well, but they're very small, they're very new, and I think they do daily NAVs. But the problem is once you start to invest in Asian funds and European funds, it's quite difficult to get those NAVs back. But we are a highly liquid pension plan. I can tell you that where we sit now, 40% of our investments are in highly liquid bonds, AAA rated bonds or investment grade bonds. We've got 30% of our funds invested in equities in Asia and Europe. Europe's been hit a bit, but we didn't predict the virus. We felt that shares in the US are overvalued, so we got out of US shares and we're down to about a 12% holding. The rest is held in cash. That cash is custodied with Morgan Stanley in tranches of $250,000, so they are federally covered. And we're gradually moving those funds over to Royal Bank of Canada for the payouts. You'll appreciate there's a conflict of interest, so we try not to use our own bank.
Yeah. That's respected.
There's one closing comment, Mr. Chairman, and I really want to thank Mr. Hill for his frank contribution today. But for the listening public, and when you understand the structure that we use in terms of even for taxation, the pension goes against the grain of how the government makes its money. I mean, simply put, our tax system is consumption-based. One of the largest sources of revenues for government is via the Customs Department in terms of bringing in consumer goods. They lobby from the business or the retailers. People need to understand that the minute people start saving money in this country, it means there's less money to buy consumer goods, which means, in essence, there'll be less revenue going elsewhere within the economy. And naturally, less revenues or a slowdown for business mean jobs and mean even revenues for the government. You turn around and you increase the pension contribution by even 5 or 10%. It means then that is money you're taking out of the consumer market that drives a lot within the local economy. I mean, that is the reality of it. One of the criticisms that I will give to the pension providers, as the chairman alluded to, is that you do have the Bankers Association that pushes the bank interest for their shareholders. You have the Real Estate Association. You have just about every single association to push their best interest to their shareholders. This is the one initiative that is, I think, in section 1 of the law, part 1 of the law, that says it's for the benefit of the employees. And the fact that we have been around for so long and can't have the pension providers even coming together to say, this is what is needed, this is in the best interest, because this is the one time that they're pushing for the employees, that we would really and truly would have liked to have seen the pension providers come together and say, this is what the country actually needs. Now, it is a very uncomfortable conversation to have, but as you rightfully said, we're kicking a big can down a very short road. And one of the things that came out of yesterday's session was we look at, both this session, is that when you take out even the very actuarial review, and people recognize that how serious that this 10% is madness to begin with. I mean, to simply put, if you're saving 10%, it takes you 10 years to save 1 year's salary. And if you're working for 40 years, you'd have saved 4 years' salary, 50 years, 5 years' salary. Even if your money is double to 10, and you even exit the workplace at 65, the mortality rate for females are 84. The mortality rate for men are 79. So people are living on average 17 years past the age of 65. You cannot expect to survive on either 4, 5, 8, or 10 years worth of salary if you're living for 17 years. So this is already an uncomfortable position. But we do live in a society where people expect every single thing instantly. And as you look at it now, even Father's Day coming around on Sunday, most people are going to end up sending you a picture or even some gift, not even just write out a little line to say Happy Father's Day, nothing. This is the society that we are living in. And it is incumbent upon us as political leaders to have that uncomfortable conversation with people. And this is why these kind of sessions are important. Because, I mean, one of the things, like I said, I was concerned, but you mentioned that, you said to the government, listen, I can't do this in 45 days, I need 60. I can tell you, well, not having known that before, and this session gives us that opportunity to at least know that, then I can't really sit back and say, well, why can I complain about Fidelity not doing something if in fact you said up front I needed 60 days? So, and this is why these things are important. But Mr. Hill, what I wouldn't really encourage you to do is to go back out and get the different pension providers and send us the recommendations to say this is what is needed. Because ultimately, the PR around pensions have not been as effective as it should. The public education, the public awareness, and a lot of stuff for the public in terms of information isn't there. I can tell you, having access now to all your competitor information, I can tell you there's some pension plan, I see the fees as being too high in terms of what they're charging admin fees. Some investment fees are a little bit too high, and these are the kind of stuff that we have raised with the regulators to go out, have the conversation, understand why these fees are structured the way in which they are structured. I've said it already, based on the evidence given here by even the personnel from the DLP, is that, in my professional opinion, and my personal opinion, I should say, I don't believe that the expertise exists within that department to truly properly regulate a $2 billion worth of pension fund. And not to take anything from them, because I think they're really trying, but at the end of the day, for the complication of these investments and what it is that they represent, they're better off being managed by SEMA and the DLP more looking for, if anything, compliance with the law. So there are structural things that we need to change. There are public education that we need to change. And when we do have a budget, I mean, I'll use the word a welfare budget that is now in excess of the education budget, it means that we're spending more money on today as opposed to what we're investing in the future. And these are the kind of uncomfortable conversations we need to have, but nonetheless, we need to have them. So I would really encourage you. I want to really thank you for the frankness. I've known you have always been outspoken, and I have respected that, and this is what the system is about. But you do have some of your colleagues that, quite frankly, are chicken and will not want to come out and say what needs to be said. And like I said, this is the one thing that they manage for employees, and they really need to do a better job. And that's one of the reasons why so many people are basically taking their money out, because, again, for the lack of information to some extent and the lack of understanding. because I can tell you a 25 or 30-year-old person isn't thinking 30, 40 years down in the future. And that's just the reality. Now, one of the things I did say in my debate was when you look at the private sector, who is primarily benefiting from this initiative, 60% of the members in the private sector are non-Caymanians. There is no guarantee that those individuals, especially those who are going to be rolled over each year, is not going to take that money and just basically say, well, it's time for me to go anyway. So the 500 million you may pay out, but how many is going to stay in the local economy again is a complete different story. It's a mystery. So if we can even get 200 to 300 million of it in the local economy, I'd be happy. But frankly, as you said, a lot of people I know are basically saying that they're going to invest elsewhere. Some are returning home. Some, I must say, has admitted to me that this is their opportunity to maybe invest in real estate and apply for PR. So there are some positives out there. But again, this should have been done on a more, a little bit more analysis behind it. One of the things that we did propose as a group, and I just want to put it out there, was that we wanted the money to be paid monthly. And the reason being was, A, if you're on island, you get the money while you're on island. If you're not here, you don't get the thing there. But you get a lump sum of money. There's no guarantee what you're going to do with it. But you're getting it monthly at a set amount as per that you need. And I can say to one good friend of mine that I had, that is one of the board of one of the pension providers, is that when we put the initial initiative out there, $850 a month for 6 months, which is $5,100, and then we look at it as the things progress on. I said, you guys didn't even consider that, so now take your licks. So it's not as if though alternate views weren't there, but again, the advocacy wasn't there. So I really do feel bad for a lot of the pension providers, because when you do look at the asset under management and the fees some fees, especially the fixed costs that will remain, the fees as a percentage of asset under management is going to go up, and it's going to make a lot of pension providers actually look inefficient at the end of this exercise. So, like I said, it would be good at least for the pension providers to come together and send us a recommendation of what is needed. You guys have the information. You guys deal with the public. You guys have more information on it than we will. And then see what it is. And we will gladly will welcome those recommendations. And as the chairman said, include those in our reports. But this is too important of an issue to have basically sit there for so long. And equally so too, industry should have also been putting pressure on the government and on the DLP to have released these reports long ago too. I mean, at the end of the day, even from corporate survival, I would have loved to have seen what the industry would have looked like, what my competitors are doing, so at least I can have an idea how much more business I can even go out there to get. So, like I said, there's an overall culture that needs to change, and I'm hoping that this session will be the opening in terms of us having more constructive dialogue going forward, because ultimately, if we don't get this right, we'll be passing on a serious burden to future generations, and that is one of the things I'm not prepared to do. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Hill, for coming. Yes. And
if I might just say something, I agree with absolutely everything you've just said. I have the same concerns. I enjoyed your comment on my competition, but I probably wouldn't want to say that myself. And the only thing I will say is that with regards to the DLP, they are very, very much in the same boat as us. We have found that during this process, Ms. Amy Wollaston especially has been extremely helpful in advocating for us. But every other comment that you've made, I do wish to point out, actually, our company is the only one that's regulated by both SEMA, because we have a corporate trust license for the trusteeship of the fund, and we have the fund itself. So we're regulated by both. The structures of the other plans are different. One thing I would also like to see on the DLP website, which we're never really able to achieve, is for individuals who are choosing their plans to be able to do an apples-to-apples comparison of the plans. That doesn't exist at the moment, and one of the very large problems of it is that we all charge fees on different ways. Okay, some of the plans charge fees as funds are coming in. So how do you factor that into the overall yield of the fund when you've already taken money out before the monies have got there? So it's not easy, but there has to be a way that someone can go online and compare the performance of every single pension plan. Because even when I try and do presentations and compare our performance with the other plans, we haven't always done better than you. I'm not criticizing the plans. The information isn't available. Even I can't get that. So how does the member of the public get that? And I find that shocking. It needs to be totally transparent.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hill. It has been a good session. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Anytime you would like to hear my opinion, I'll be happy to share them with you.
Thank you, sir. We'll suspend for 10 minutes while we get the next group around.